My coworker called me trembling, his voice thick with fear. He warned me immediately, saying, "Don't return home tonight, Jenna. Your roommate isn't real, okay?" I froze and whispered back, asking him what he meant. He replied with panicked urgency. "I learned something horrifying today. She's been using your identity. Pull up your credit report." Within minutes, everything collapsed entirely. I realized my whole existence had been stolen completely away by the one person trusted my name. Is Jenna Morris. I am 29 years old, working as marketing manager in the busy city Denver. The woman who deceived me, my supposed roommate, called Becca. At least, that's her claim. She was 28. Supposedly said she worked event planning. We had lived as roommates for nearly 8 long months. The person who helped me, the one who saved everything, was Owen Hayes' age. 30, a coworker in my department who sensed something deeply wrong. My younger sister, named Riley, 25, studying cybersecurity, living far away in Boston. Detective Lisa Crawford, eventually investigated, working under Financial Crimes Unit. Marcus Chen, a fraud investigator, guided me through painful recovery. The worst violation I experienced, if you want details. Now, how I discovered horrifying truth that my roommate stole everything, and how. I fought back. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching this from, and please hit that subscribe because this story will change how you think about trust. 8 months before chaos started, I relocated abruptly to Denver after receiving major job promotion. I'd worked in Ohio marketing for nearly 5 full years. Finally, I had opportunity to manage my own team at our company's Denver office. The move felt exciting, terrifying because I knew nobody there. I had barely 3 weeks to search for new housing and settle before work started. I viewed countless housing options, but everything felt too expensive or placed in unsafe neighborhoods. Then I discovered Becca online through a matching roommate application. Her profile seemed absolutely perfect. 28, working event planning, didn't smoke, kept stable hours, and had a stunning apartment, 2 bedrooms, in great neighborhood, offering shared space, reasonable rent. We met one day for coffee and conversation flowed easily. She felt warm, funny, comfortable. Immediately we clicked without effort. By end of our meeting, I agreed to move in. Living with Becca began wonderfully. She worked unpredictable, odd schedules, often away entire busy weekends handling weddings or corporate events. We always had enough space, but when both home together, we bonded naturally and deeply. We cooked dinner, shared movies, talked openly about our days. Becca welcomed me to Denver, introduced her close trusted friends, helped me feel far less alone in that new city. I felt unbelievably lucky then, finding not only one roommate, but someone who became friends. She showed genuine interest always, asking about my loving family back home in rural Ohio, my demanding new job role, my long-term life goals. I sincerely appreciated her presence after long, tiring workdays. When I had deadlines approaching, a stressful, overwhelming project due, Becca offered organizing my paperwork, helped file bills for me so I could focus fully. I believed she was thoughtful, a genuinely caring, supportive friend. We celebrated my June birthday. Becca planned a surprise dinner with friends I met through, and I finally felt settled, building an actual life here in the city, Denver. Honestly, everything appeared normal and peaceful looking back now. I realized there were countless warning signs. I completely overlooked those moments, small details that seemed harmless but truly didn't add up. A couple times, I returned finding Becca inside my bedroom. She always explained things casually, saying she needed my hairdryer or checking windows before storms. Once my mail arrived, opened, Becca claimed mailman. Damaged envelopes. Another time my documents vanished, my social security card missing after using it for paperwork. Becca searched with me everywhere, suggesting it maybe got tossed. I ordered another replacement quickly and never thought about it. Sometimes she asked personal questions about my financial details openly, like how much I earned or which bank I used. I assumed it was normal roommate talk about splitting expenses, ensuring rent remained affordable always. She asked about my loans, and I said paid off, mentioned credit scores while chatting because she wanted my car. Nothing felt suspicious back then. She was friend and roommate. Why would I doubt her or question her gentle interest the night everything transformed completely? Started entirely in normal routine, it happened on Thursday evening in the month of November. I was working late hours finalizing a big client presentation for early morning meeting tomorrow. I texted Becca I'd return home later than usual tonight. She replied with simple thumbs up. Around 11:30 that evening, I remained seated at desk when Owen knocked quietly inside. Owen and I were coworkers, slowly becoming reliable work friends. He was always soft-spoken, thoughtful. We sometimes shared lunchtime meals, but that night he appeared pale, tense, unlike ever before. He asked for private conversation. I said sure without hesitation, then he closed my door slowly. He pulled out his phone and showed me something unexpected, something that confused me initially. It was a dating profile on some random, unfamiliar app. The profile displayed my photos, pictures I instantly recognized online, taken from Instagram and Facebook. But the listed name wasn't mine. The bio contained accurate information, details about my current job, my hobbies, and daily interests, even mentioned moving to Denver. But I never created anything, never used that dating app. Honestly, I'd never heard it. Owen explained that his cousin, who lived locally in Denver, had matched with this profile on that dating application recently. His cousin thought face familiar and sent Owen the screenshot asking if he knew her. Since the bio mentioned company, specifically naming where we worked, Owen saw my photos. Immediately realized something was terribly wrong because he'd heard me mention so many times repeatedly that I wasn't dating anyone currently and I wasn't on apps. Owen said he attempted contacting the profile using message system, asked pointed questions about employment and where photos originated from. Whoever controlled that account blocked him instantly without explanation. That made Owen extremely suspicious enough for deeper private investigation. He used reverse image searching on all the photos available and found them spread everywhere, multiple different platforms across internet. There were accounts on dating rental application sites using me, even a forum for loans, all displaying my face everywhere. Using my photos and details. Owen said he called me earlier that evening, but I missed his call since. I was in meeting, so he waited at office to tell me face to face. I felt suddenly physically nauseous staring at the displayed screen. I asked who would do something cruel, harmful like this. Owen looked tense, extremely uncomfortable, and asked carefully about access, if anyone had personal access to my documents, my devices, my laptop, or my phone. The answer hit me brutally, like a harsh, direct punch straight to the center stomach. Becca had access to everything. We lived together. Every day she entered my bedroom. Repeatedly she helped organize my paperwork. She'd stood nearby many times when I left laptop open on the kitchen table unattended. She asked questions about everything, every detail of my life, and I answered without hesitation because I believed we were genuine, honest, trustworthy, close friends. Owen suggested checking my credit right now without delaying anything before taking any other action. I opened a credit website, a free monitoring service online, and logged in using information, just basic identity details quickly. What appeared made my head feel like the room spinning. For credit cards were listed under my name without permission. Accounts I never once opened. A personal loan, $15,000 that I never applied for. A car loan, $28,000 under my identity. Multiple hard inquiries showing activity from past 6 confusing months from companies I never contacted. My credit score had plummeted, dropping from 760, drastically falling all the way 550. I couldn't breathe properly anymore. Owen saw the screen immediately and insisted calling police instantly. My hands shook uncontrollably, trembling so badly I couldn't dial. Owen grabbed phone and dialed 911 himself. He explained situation to dispatcher, calmly stating we had victim of major identity theft who discovered severe, extensive fraud and needed officers responding immediately while we waited. I checked frantically, scrolling through other accounts. I opened email login history, saw access from strange devices and unfamiliar, unexplained locations. Repeatedly someone had monitored my emails for several long, terrifying months. I checked cloud photo storage activity logs. showing recent access from some unknown, unidentified device. Someone viewed all my photos. Every personal moment stored there I called bank fraud. Hotline hands shaking painfully with fear told them to freeze everything because identity had been stolen, the representative placed holds everywhere while verifying my information carefully. Then I called Riley immediately, even though Boston was midnight. She answered, sounding half asleep, asking immediately what was wrong. I tried explaining through tears, but my voice kept breaking. Riley snapped awake, instantly concerned, told me to change everything, every password I currently used right now without any delay, and enable strong two-factor authentication on every account I owned. She asked who had physical access to my documents and all my personal devices. I said only Becca, truthfully. Riley went silent for seconds, then said, "We must assume Becca possessed copies of everything." To police officers arrived then at my office around 12:30 in the early morning hours. I walked them through everything discovered in the last frantic, overwhelming, terrifying 60 minutes. The fake dating profiles Owen had found matching my identity. The fraudulent credit cards opened and loans on my report. The unauthorized email account access and stolen cloud photo data. I told them about Becca, how we lived together months, how she'd accessed my room, my documents, and private information, how she even helped filing important paperwork beside me often. The officers wrote detailed notes, said they must contact Becca as soon as humanly possible. They asked if I wanted to go home right now or stay somewhere else instead. I said absolutely not going. I couldn't face her alone, not after learning her actions. Owen offered to drive immediately, drive me to nearby hotel, said he would stay there, wait with me until checked in. Making sure I stayed safe, the officers said they'd head directly to my apartment tonight to attempt contacting suspicious Becca, and that I must stay far away until investigation completed at the hotel I couldn't even begin thinking about. Sleep. I sat frozen on bed with my laptop open wide, searching my name repeatedly online, finding more disturbing stolen evidence reviews written under my name on websites I never visited, a resume uploaded somewhere online on a job searching site containing my real education history but completely fake, fabricated experience. Every discovery deepened my violation, made me feel increasingly angry. Around 2 in the morning, I received a sudden call, a call from Detective Crawford working in Financial Crimes Unit. She'd been assigned my case and wanted me at station first thing in the morning to file a full report with all documentation. I gathered then she told me something that made my stomach crash and drop even further downward. Officers went to my apartment, but Becca wasn't there anymore. When they looked around carefully with landlords, granted full permission, they saw her room different. Becca's bedroom looked partially cleared. Her closet held empty hangers, drawers looked halfway emptied out. Many personal items were missing. She'd already begun quietly packing, leaving before I discovered anything. Detective Crawford said something else, something that made everything worse. In basement storage assigned unit, officers located a locked cabinet, one neither landlord nor I even knew existed previously there. When they managed to open, they found documents not mine. Multiple fake driver's licenses created, all showing my stolen photos, but with completely different names, blank checks printed using information, my stolen bank account details, photocopies of my key documents, my social security identification card, my birth certificate and passport. But there were also documents belonging to 3 unknown women, people I had never known. Becca had been running operation, a full organized identity scheme, and I was newest victim, her most recent targeted identity. Over next few following days, the full picture slowly emerged, and it was far worse than anything imagined earlier. Detective Crawford explained information clearly. The woman known as Becca Shaw wasn't truly real, not the person she claimed. The real, actual Becca Shaw lived in Florida, struggling still after her identity was stolen 2 long years earlier. Already the person inside my apartment had stolen that woman's identity, using it to build life a completely fake, Denver existence, she targeted me deliberately online through the roommate matching application. Because I had recently moved, had zero local connections nearby in my profile. Showed stability, a steady job and credit. Every part of our friendship was intentional, calculated. Manipulation entirely. Her personal questions weren't friendly. They were pure information gathering. When she helped organizing paperwork, she secretly photographed my documents. Those times found in bedrooms, she likely installed hidden spyware or searched for additional documents. Our entire 8-month friendship was an elaborate destructive con designed entirely to steal everything tied to my identity. Detective Crawford gave full breakdown explaining all financial devastation involved, and the numbers were staggering. Becca opened 7 credit cards under my stolen legal name, carrying combined balances $45,000. She took personal loan $15,000 in my identity and a car loan $28,000. Fraudulent charge, she filed fraudulent tax return under my information, collecting refund. She used identity to rent another apartment across the city, trashed it, then abandoned everything, leaving me legally responsible, fully owing thousands for severe damages. She opened utility accounts everywhere, accounts across multiple different locations, left unpaid, ending in collections, all appearing under my identity. The total estimated financial damage was well over $100,000. Even worse, because Becca carried so much verified personal information about me and had handled every single detail carefully, using paperwork that appeared legitimate. Proving that I wasn't responsible would drag on for months or maybe even several years. My credit was entirely demolished. My financial world completely collapsed. I refused to simply accept any of this quietly happening. I refused to let everything crush me and bury me. With Detective Crawford actively guiding me through each tedious step, I submitted full police reports, sent fraud affidavits to bureaus. I began contesting every account that had been opened fraudulently. I also hired Marcus Chen, a fraud investigator highly specialized in assisting identity theft victims. Marcus explained honestly to me that this process would be long, costly, draining, and relentless. But he'd also witnessed recoveries from situations equally devastating as the one I was facing. We needed to document everything carefully, reach every financial institution involved, construct a fully airtight case, proving I was victimized and not any willing participant. Riley flew over from Boston to support me through everything. She used her technical expertise to trace each online location where my identity was misused. We spent long entire weekends sorting documents, creating detailed spreadsheets, filing disputes, and making calls. My mom, Susan, sent money to help cover legal expenses and cover living essentials. Meanwhile, my bank accounts stayed frozen during the active fraud investigation. Detective Crawford's entire team worked to locate Becca, or whoever she truly was in reality. They learned she'd repeated patterns in at least 3 cities before arriving in Denver earlier. She targeted young professional women who recently moved into areas, became their trustworthy roommate initially, stole their personal identities quietly, and vanished before getting caught. Her actual name was Melissa Vance, and warrants existed in states spread across multiple different jurisdictions. Investigators tracked her movements using the car she had purchased with a fraudulent loan stolen from my compromised financial profile. She sold it to dealers at a Las Vegas dealership. They acquired dealership security footage showing her face and movements, and followed the trail further, which ultimately led them straight to Henderson, Nevada, where she was finally arrested exactly 3 weeks after she disappeared completely from the Denver area entirely. While Melissa sat in jail quietly waiting for her upcoming criminal trial, I faced my own private battle that felt equally crushing and overwhelming inside. I had to fight with every single bank, every credit card company, and each loan institution to prove I was a victim and never responsible for any debt. Even with police reports and official fraud affidavits, the companies moved unbelievably slow. Certain representatives even implied I might have been careless with my information, or maybe had given Melissa permission to access my personal financial accounts. Others told me I needed to prove signatures weren't mine on applications, forcing me to consider hiring handwriting experts impossible for me to afford. One credit card company insisted I still owed them a remaining $4,300 even after I sent copies of the police report nearly 5 times. I hired a lawyer who specialized in identity theft cases because alone I was getting nowhere. The legal fees continued piling higher every week. But my mom willingly took out a loan to help me fight this exhausting, endless battle. Owen organized a fundraiser at work where coworkers donated more than $8,000 to help with overwhelming legal costs draining me. Knowing people genuinely believed me and stood beside me gave me strength to continue when I wanted desperately to quit. I became almost expert on identity theft laws and victims' rights simply out of absolute necessity. I learned about both the Fair Credit Reporting Act and the Identity Theft and Assumption Deterrence Act through constant research. I discovered exactly which federal agencies to contact and how to escalate complaints whenever companies refused to cooperate with anything. Marcus showed me how to write stronger dispute letters, citing legal regulations and very specific laws. Riley helped me completely lock down digital accounts and taught me security measures I'd never considered in my entire life. Slowly and painfully, I started making real progress. One credit card company finally agreed to remove the fraudulent debt entirely from my damaged accounts. Then another lender eventually followed shortly after that. The personal loan was finally forgiven after nearly 3 exhausting months fighting. The fraudulent car loan took 6 full months but was ultimately resolved. Each tiny victory felt massive after endless frustration. Detective Crawford kept me updated constantly regarding the ongoing investigation into Melissa. She explained that Melissa was an expert social engineer trained in psychology and advanced manipulation tactics. Everything she ever did was deliberate and calculated. She built fast trust by sharing fake vulnerabilities and creating false friendship. She asked seemingly harmless questions that quietly gathered critical personal data daily. She timed her thefts perfectly whenever I seemed distracted juggling heavy workloads. She spread fraudulent activity slowly stretched over months so nothing would trigger any immediate suspicious red flags in financial systems. Realizing this was professional-level manipulation helped me stop blaming myself constantly for feeling stupid or thinking I had been careless with private information. Melissa's trial was scheduled for 8 long months after her sudden arrest. I would need to testify and confront directly the woman who pretended to be my friend while quietly destroying everything in my entire life. I worked with a victim's advocate carefully to prepare my testimony, practicing how to remain calm and stick strictly to the essential facts. I wrote a detailed victim impact statement describing how the identity theft had damaged absolutely everything. My credit score collapsed, my ability to rent any apartment completely vanished, my mental health spiraled, my capacity to trust any person was shattered. The prosecutor told me my case remained strong, and with the evidence from multiple victims spanning several states, Melissa would likely face serious prison time for her crimes. When the trial finally began, I sat inside the courtroom quietly watching Melissa being escorted inside wearing bright orange clothes. She looked drastically different from the warm, friendly Becca I had remembered. Her hair was darker, her expression empty cold. The prosecution presented huge mountains of damning evidence. The fake IDs discovered inside my basement storage. Digital forensics clearly showing Melissa accessing my accounts from her personal devices. Testimony from 3 women in various other states who'd been harmed exactly the same manipulative way. Financial records carefully tracing the stolen money through multiple routed fraudulent accounts. When I took the witness stand, I kept my voice steady while telling my entire story slowly, clearly, and truthfully. I described how we met originally and how Melissa had gained trust over months of pretending. The specific way she accessed my personal information. I explained the financial damage and the exhausting year required to start rebuilding everything. Once again, Melissa's defense attorney tried suggesting I had been careless somehow, but I calmly explained. I'd taken normal, reasonable precautions, and Melissa deliberately exploited our shared living situation fully to commit these crimes. When the attorney asked how everything affected me, my composure finally cracked. I said I no longer trusted people easily, that I spent thousands of dollars I lacked fixing problems I never created, and that I lost countless hours proving my own identity belonged to me and nobody else at all anymore. The other 3 victims gave similar powerful testimony. One woman had been arrested for crimes committed by Melissa using stolen identity documents and personal information. Another woman lost her dream job due entirely to her destroyed credit and financial reputation ruined. The pattern became painfully clear and utterly devastating. The jury deliberated less than 4 hours before finding Melissa Vance guilty on all serious charges. At sentencing, the judge called her actions calculated and cruelly premeditated against victims. Melissa was sentenced finally to 12 long years in federal prison custody and ordered full restitution to every single victim. When the sentence was officially read aloud in courtroom, I felt relief wash slowly over me. Justice had finally been served, though 12 years could never erase damages. By the time Melissa's trial began, I had already made substantial progress, recovering my stolen identity and slowly rebuilding my life. 8 out of 10 fraudulent accounts had resolved and were removed completely from my official credit report. My credit score recovered more than 150 points, though still not fully to previous levels. Apartment damages were forgiven after landlord reviewed police report proving I wasn't responsible for destruction or negligence. Tax complications with IRS were successfully resolved entirely. 2 remaining accounts remained in dispute, but slowly progressing with Marcus guidance. The recovery process lasted over a year of constant calls, paperwork, disputes, and frustration. Finally, I could see light shining at tunnel's end and feel hope. I learned extensively about credit systems, fraud protection laws, and financial institutions more than I wanted to ever know previously. But that acquired knowledge made me feel powerful, strong, competent, and no longer helpless against deceit. After the trial ended, I chose to remain in Denver instead of fleeing the city entirely. I had built real friendships here, especially with Owen, who had literally saved me by noticing problems early and speaking up whenever something seemed out of the ordinary. I found a therapist trained specifically in trauma from financial abuse and betrayal by someone trusted. Our therapy sessions helped me work through all complicated emotions caused by being deceived completely by someone I trusted. I moved into a small studio apartment and lived entirely alone, enjoying privacy. I preferred solitude over risking another roommate situation, at least temporarily for my personal comfort and safety. I adopted a dog from a rescue shelter, a sweet mutt named Charlie, loyal, honest, and trustworthy in ways that finally felt completely safe. Riley visited me frequently from Boston, offering comfort and encouragement during long weeks of adjustment, and my mom stayed 1 whole month to help me settle fully into my new apartment and provide unconditional, loving support. It's about 6 months. Later, I received a call from a victims advocacy organization helping identity theft survivors navigate recovery process. They asked if I would be willing to speak with others starting recovery from similar traumatic experiences. I agreed immediately, thinking it would help me process my own experience more fully. And it proved incredibly healing to guide others through systems I had fought so hard to navigate completely. I started volunteering regularly, offering practical advice about managing creditors, writing effective dispute letters, and maintaining hope throughout long recovery process that felt overwhelming. I also began speaking at community centers and local colleges, sharing knowledge about identity theft prevention actively. I shared my story to teach others how fraud really occurs and manipulates victims. That victims aren't careless, stupid, or naive ever, and con artists like Melissa are skilled professionals exploiting normal human trust. Through advocacy work, I found purpose after experiencing the worst time of my life and extreme trauma. I learned to balance healthy caution with ability to maintain trust and connect with good people again. My therapist taught me Melissa's. Crimes were never my fault, and openness to friendship was not weakness. But I did change how I protected myself carefully, forever. I froze my credits so no one could open accounts in my name without first unfreezing them. I created completely unique passwords for every single online account securely. I used a password manager to keep track safely and enabled two-factor authentication on every account. I checked my credit report every single month instead of once yearly. I became more thoughtful about sharing personal information and carefully considered who I shared details with, but I reminded myself that protecting yourself doesn't mean distrusting everyone blindly. It just requires being informed and taking reasonable precautions everyone should practice. Despite all trauma endured, some genuinely positive outcomes emerged from the experience. I developed a much closer, deeper relationship with Riley through our shared struggles and constant support. Through everything we experienced together, I discovered myself to be far stronger and resilient than I had previously imagined. I became an advocate helping dozens of people recover from similar situations. Owen introduced me to one of his friends, a teacher named Alex, and we began dating slowly and carefully with patience and open, honest communication always. I was completely honest with Alex about my past trauma and why I needed boundaries and clarity. He was patient, understanding, and together we built something healthy, supportive, and completely real for us. I even got promoted at work, partly because my boss admired how I handled difficulties with determination, professionalism, and courage. 2 years after Owen knocked on my office door that night, my credit fully recovered and stabilized again. Every fraudulent account resolved, and I rebuilt an emergency fund successfully. I purchased a car using my own legitimate auto loan again. I still experience moments of anxiety occasionally when sharing personal information online or when someone tries to get close too quickly or suddenly. But I have tools to manage those feelings and people to safely talk to about them whenever needed for support and guidance continually. Melissa Vance is currently 4 years into her 12-year prison sentence, serving justice fully. Honestly, I rarely think about her or her actions anymore. What she did became only a chapter in life, not the entire story. I'm 31 years old now and have rebuilt everything she attempted to destroy completely. What I learned is identity theft isn't only financial crime stealing credit cards. It's a deep violation affecting your trust, confidence, and how you navigate the world around. Recovery is absolutely possible with persistence, knowledge, and support from people. If you're watching this and have experienced something similar, please remember you're not alone anywhere, and it was never your fault ever. Con artists like Melissa are trained professionals targeting trusting normal people in everyday situations. The shame belongs entirely to them, not to the victim suffering through. If you haven't experienced this yet, protect yourself now by monitoring credit regularly, using strong, unique passwords consistently, enabling two-factor authentication immediately, and controlling personal documents carefully. If anyone warns you suspiciously, like Owen did for me, act immediately without delay can prevent much greater potential damage. That single conversation saved me from even worse consequences than suffered. Hit subscribe and leave a comment telling where you're watching from and if this story changed how you consider protecting your identity, finances, and personal information safely moving forward. If sharing my worst experience helps even one person avoid this nightmare or helps a victim feel less alone recovering identity fraud, then it was absolutely worth reliving fully. Trust people, but verify what you can whenever possible. Protect yourself actively, not fearfully, and always. Remember, even when someone destroys what you've built before, you have strength inside to rebuild it stronger than ever.